Hello, Tiara Resource Circle. I'm Allison Miller, and we are going to work together today to distinguish nourishing practices. What's a nourishing practice? Well, that's a practice that you engage in, and it can actually be quite quick and short. It's a practice that supports your well-being. Now, why is that so important in the realm of leadership? Well, in our true leadership model, you know that one of the key dimensions is influence, right? That we actually have influence as a leader. We're able to speak out, we're able to offer clear messages and a sense of direction, right? We're actually able to engage people in a shared vision, and that is what supports us in being able to produce results consistently, where our influence goes way beyond what we can do by ourselves. And in order to be able to really kind of emanate out, I like to think of influence like you're dropping a rock in the pond that ripples out. And if we want that ripple out to affect people in a positive way, engage people, get people to participate in the larger shared vision, well, if we're dropping a rock from a place of being stressed out, overwhelmed, upset, angry, without our center feeling like we're being kind of unconscious in how we're leading and operating, well, that ripple effect isn't actually going to be that effective. It's going to be hard to get people to participate in a shared vision. And so taking care of your own well-being is actually about supporting yourself to really be a conscious leader, a leader who is connected to herself, connected to her deeper intentions, connected to the impact and the influence that she wants to have, and able to actually make deliberate choices about how she operates on a day-to-day basis in all kinds of situations. So our well-being is actually fundamental and foundational to our capacity to lead effectively and to be able to produce the results that we want and to feel good about ourselves. Not to mention, it's really important for our own health, our well-being, our relationships, whether they're personal or professional, can actually affect our longevity and many, many aspects of our life. So before we jump into actually going through the tool together, I do want to give you a quick little biology lesson so that you can have some context for a way of thinking about nourishing practices that I think is really powerful. So I'm going to pull up a quick picture here. Okay, so this is our autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system is part of the central nervous system, and this particular part of the nervous system has two branches. It's responsible for all of the automatic functioning in our body, like breathing, heart rate, breath, I already said breath, for our blood pressure, everything that happens automatically in the body that doesn't require any conscious effort by you is regulated by the autonomic nervous system. Now, there are two branches. One branch is called the sympathetic nervous system, and you can see it here in this picture. So you see back along the back side of the body, everything in blue, that's the spine, and then that white cord running down the middle, that's our cerebrospinal fluid. In front of that, you see that yellow line. That is our sympathetic nervous system, and that's the part of the nervous system responsible for fight, flight, freeze, and also, I learned this recently, appease. Sometimes when we're stressed out, the way that we cope is by appeasing. But we typically think of this as fight or flight. This is where our body breathing rate goes up, our heart rate goes up, our muscles tense, our focus narrows to surviving an immediate danger. Now, our fight or flight system in present day reality is going off all the time in connection to things that are not a mortal danger. But basically, this is a survival mechanism to keep us alive. Now, if you look in front of that, you'll see this incredible kind of a green garden flowing throughout the body. Well, that is the other branch, and that's the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system is the branch of the body that's responsible for kind of the counter to the fight or flight. It's the rest, renew, heal. So when you go on vacation and you sit out by the pool and you have that feeling of like, right, that's your parasympathetic nervous system that's been stimulated. Oftentimes at the end of a yoga class, a nice meditation, can be all kinds of things. Even exercising can actually help stimulate our parasympathetic nervous system. Anything that helps us feel more relaxed, that stimulates a sense of well-being, connection to ourselves. So it's critical if we want to be a conscious leader. We want to be someone who can really lead in a way where we are choosing how we operate and we're actually able to have the impact and the influence that we want to have, that we have the presence and the charisma that we want, that we deliberately nourish, that we fertilize, in a sense, this interior garden that we have, this parasympathetic nervous system. And I purposely chose this image because I think it's such a beautiful representation of the parasympathetic nervous system. And every day, all day long, one of the most important things that you can be doing to support your leadership and support your success and support your relationships is to actually be taking care of your nervous system and noticing when you go into fight or flight, and then deliberately engaging in nourishing practices to fertilize that internal garden that you see there. Okay, so nourishing practices can come in all shapes and sizes. Let's move in now into an inquiry that's going to help us identify them. So the first thing, let me share my screen again. Okay, here you go. So here's our inquiry. So you want to start at the top here. I want to ask you a few questions just to get you generated and thinking about well-being a little bit more. And I've written these down. So start by actually checking in with yourself. How is your well-being right now? Think about, where are you right now? Are you feeling relaxed and calm? Do you feel like the parasympathetic nervous system is stimulated? Or do you notice some sympathetic fight or flight nervous system stimulation? And maybe think back over the last week. How have you been doing? How's your well-being? Where are you attending to it? Where are you neglecting it? You can span back to think even over the last month if you like. How are you doing in regards to your own well-being? And I'm curious, how aware of your well-being are you on a day-to-day basis? And you can jot down your notes. Take a little time to think about that. So at any point, by the way, as we go through this, feel free to hit pause if I'm moving faster than you want to go, which I probably will be, and then hit play when you're ready to continue. Another question for you. Given what you are committed to as a leader, what can you see that you need in regards to your well-being? What are you perhaps needing in order for you to be able to accomplish what you want to accomplish, lead in the way that you want to lead? What are you actually needing regarding your well-being? And then final question for this inquiry, what gets in the way of prioritizing your well-being? What's actually getting in the way? You could also look at what's supporting it as well, if you like. Are there things that are people or commitments that you've made that support your well-being? But we particularly want to know what's getting in the way. I'll give you probably the most common example is we tell ourselves we don't have time. Yeah, we'll go to yoga after we get through this deadline. It's the when I, then I will syndrome that so many of us have. I think it's really good for us to be conscious of and start to be aware of in our lives. What kinds of situations, events, experiences do we have that tend to stimulate our sympathetic nervous system? Where are we more vulnerable to that stimulation, to the fight or flight? And what kinds of situations, practices, contexts, situations help actually nourish or fertilize our parasympathetic nervous system, that interior green garden that we saw? Okay, so take more time if you need it. You can hit pause. And let's move on to the second box. The question is, why do I choose to prioritize my well-being? This is a very personal question. I want you to just think through now, for what reasons? For the sake of what? What are you up to in your life? What matters to you? Why do you choose to prioritize your own well-being? Take a few deep breaths if you need to get more deeply in touch with yourself. Okay, now let's begin brainstorming. So in this third box, we're going to actually brainstorm a list of possible nourishing practices. And I'm going to give you a few guidelines to help you. First of all, these can be practices that can be done very quickly, that can be done anywhere. They can also be practices that are more involved and take more time. They can be practices that are free, practices that cost money. They can be practices that you do by yourself. They can be practices that you do with others. Also, something really key that I just recently realized is that these practices can be things that we think of as more kind of Zen, more peaceful. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to walk in nature. We do things that feel kind of gentler on the system as a way of supporting the unwinding of our nervous system and calming and soothing ourselves. But I've noticed something, which is sometimes when I'm really stressed out or really triggered or upset, especially when I'm really angry and I'm ruminating in my mind, those practices don't really work for me. Those gentle, softer practices, I'm like, screw that. That's just not working. I can't reach more of a state of peace or centeredness or even homeostasis with those practices. And what I've realized is that when I'm in a more intense state, I actually need, like, boom, a more intense practice. So for example, one of the intense practices I practice is something called jellyfish breathing. And I'm going to actually get up in my seat so you can see this. It's where I actually take my hands on my rib cage and where I actually breathe into my rib cage, like I'm expanding it out, making my rib cage push into my hands. And then I'm going to exhale like I'm squeezing a grapefruit and I'm squeezing all the juice out of it, pushing, and I'm going to exhale and make my ribs move away from my hands. So it's like this. And I get into a rhythm with that jellyfish breathing where I'm actually metabolizing the intensity of what I'm experiencing. Dancing intensely to like rock music or drumming music, getting out and taking a run. I just want you to know that your nourishing practices can sometimes be really intense because that's what you need. And sometimes they might be much quieter and more peaceful. So take some time now and think about what supports you in feeling like you're fertilizing the parasympathetic nervous system. What helps you feel a sense of well-being? Walking in an outside garden if you have one nearby, meditation, stretching, snuggling with someone else, crying, listening to music, deep breathing, reading. Personally, I love to sit in a coffee shop and read or journal. Maybe sometimes just taking a time out and resting when you can, if you're home. I work at home, so I'm very fortunate. I can just go lay in my bed for 10 minutes if I want to. Just brainstorm out. What are behaviors, actions you can take that support your well-being? And this isn't a list of things that you should do. It's a list of things that genuinely feel, that's nourishing for me. So just take all the time you need, hit pause, and brainstorm as many nourishing practices as you can think of. All right, now let's go down to the very bottom here, and what we want to do is narrow down to what are your top 5 nourishing practices. So look over your brainstorm list and think about what are the ones that really are the most impactful. You might also want to pick 1 or 2 that are simple and easy to do, ones that you could do anywhere that don't require another person or money. Think about things that you can do and narrow that down to the really top 5. The practices that you want to count on, you want to rely on, that you know that if you engage in, are going to really support your well-being as a leader and as a human being. We'd actually love to hear from you what those practices are that you come up with. So hit pause if you need to. Take all the time you need. And then we encourage you to revisit these nourishing practices. Sometimes they can feel like they expire. Write them down somewhere where you actually look at them. And we'd love to hear from you. So really do share with us in the comments, what's your nourishing practices? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of your top nourishing practices. If you have questions about the content of this video or this inquiry, or you'd like some support, please feel free to write a note to us in the Ask a Coach section on the website. And I wish you very well in nourishing yourself. I would say that there's nothing more important in my own evolution as a leader, as a mother, as a wife, as a citizen, right? Being able to be someone that knows how to take care of myself, given the reality that leading a life, there's stress involved, there's challenges, there's difficulties, there's past issues come up sometimes where I feel re-traumatized, and that I need a way to support myself to metabolize those difficult thoughts, sensations, and emotions, and to feel good, to feel centered, to feel grounded, and to feel like I can actually consciously choose how I lead my life. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you with more Tiara tools.